Hey community, in today's episode, Matthew West joins the podcast to talk about his latest album, My Story, Your Glory, worship leading, songwriting, and a ton more. It was great getting to talk with him. We hope you enjoy it, and be sure to get all of the tracks for My Story, Your Glory by Matthew West on loopcommunity.com.
What's up, everyone? Hope you guys are having an awesome week. Today, we're jumping on with the Matthew West to chat about some new music he has come out with and just all things kind of worship leading and songwriting. So thank you guys for tuning in, and let's welcome in Matthew West.
What's going
Mr.
on?
West, thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today. It's great.
Yeah, not a problem. This is just terrific. I think you've been a busy guy. You have had a lot of music come out, I think, last month. So we just wanted to jump on here and get whatever time we could with you just to hear about life recently, kind of what you've been up to, and what life is looking for you. So just kind of share with us what you've been up to.
Yeah, it's been an exciting season. In fact, as I just realized over my shoulder, there's still some balloons in my studio that my team brought me celebrating. The numbers, you can't see them, but the numbers are 22. And the reason is because I just released an album, a double album that had 22 songs on it. So we're still kind of the confetti has fallen in terms of our team celebrating everybody's hard work. But, so it's been an exciting season, just releasing a new album and then hitting the road.
Yeah.
Been a very busy season, but, trying to learn how to soak up just to kind of have gratitude when you release a project and not be so worried about how it's received, to not skip past the different important stages of like celebration, which I'm not very good at. So maybe that's why I keep the balloons up.
Yeah, man. Well, that is well deserved. A 22 track record is nothing. Yeah, that's no small feat. I'll just say that. So you deserve to just kind of sit in that for a second and just be celebrated. That's awesome.
Sure.
Yeah. What can you tell us about that record? Let's kind of jump into it. Released last month. Just kind of share the process of that. How long has it been in the works? And just give us the story there.
Yeah, the album's called My Story, Your Glory, and it's I created it as a double album, and it's really split in half. My Story is album number 1, and then Your Glory is album number 2. For anybody who's kind of listened to my music for any amount of time, you might know that I'm a storyteller at heart. I think most songwriters are. It's just we tell different types of stories. And for me, a big part of my creative process has been inviting people to share their story and recognize the power in the story that God's writing through their life. And so I actually, over the last several years, have written a lot of songs inspired by the stories of people's lives that are shared with me. And so album 1 is my story. It's me sharing the stories of my life over the last 3 years, as well as like the stories of some other people's lives, really powerful testimonies. And it's more of a singer-songwriter pop record, which is kind of more what the lane that I've been in most often as a songwriter. And then the second album, Your Glory, is a worshipful expression. It's kind of my first worship album, if you will. And I did that as like each song is a worshipful response to how God is at work in the stories of our lives. And so My Story, Your Glory, and a lot of people have asked, how come so many songs? And, I've always been a prolific songwriter and have more songs than I'm ever able to record. But the real answer to that is we had so many concerts canceled in 20 and 21 that I had plenty of time on my hands. And so I started dreaming dreams, from a creative standpoint with all those shows canceled. So there you have it.
That's right. Dang. Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah. So you've been doing this for quite some time. Maybe let's hear a little bit about, your journey. What was it for you as far as your introduction to songwriting? Like, let's get back to the early stages. Like, what kind of called you into this thing as a songwriter and as an artist? And then it's kind of a two-parter. I mean, what in what ways has that changed over the course of your career? What do you see now that's different from maybe where you started as a songwriter?
Well, I've always loved music. I grew up. My dad has been in. My mom and dad have been in ministry since before I was born. My parents were youth pastors before I was born, and then pastors of a church for 38 years in the Chicago suburbs. And so, I grew up in and around church my whole life. Music was always a big part, and I was always drawn to music. Ever since I can remember, I was the kid who would geek out over reading the liner notes. I was curious, like who wrote which song and which label they were on, and all of those
Yeah.
kinds of things. But my passion wasn't music early on; it was sports, and that was just growing up in the Midwest. You can see it on my hat.
That's right.
I'm a big Cubs fan, and just I
Let's
wanted to be
go.
a baseball player. So yeah. So my passion was kind of overshooting music and focused more on sports until
Mm.
that dream of playing sports in college or pro kind of that door shut, and I began to look around and go, oh well, wait a minute, maybe I think a lot of times our ambitions get misguided, and I'm thankful for a mom and dad that always kind of helped redirect me to go, hey, it's great for you to have dreams and goals, but God's dreams for you are bigger and better than whatever you can dream up on your own. And that's where I began to really circle back
Yeah.
towards this love of music and songwriting. And some of my first songs were written I didn't really start until like late in high school, my senior year of high school, like writing songs. But I would take my dad's sermon notes for the upcoming Sunday and sit in the sanctuary and try to write a song inspired by what he was preaching about. And those were some of the first kind of songs that I wrote, were sort of giving myself an assignment, almost like reading a movie script, which now all these years later, I actually get the chance to do that from time to time. Like they'll hand me the script to the movie, movie that just came out, Jesus Revolution. They're like, hey, we want a song for the end credits. Can you read the script and come in and watch the early screening of the film while it's still being finished? And then, I get my assignment and I go write a song inspired by the movie. So
cool.
It's kind of fun to go from like my dad's church in suburban Chicago, Illinois, writing songs inspired by his sermon notes, to being in Nashville and, taking on a new assignment. And in a lot of ways, when I write a song inspired by somebody's story, it's a lot like how I started back in the sanctuary of my church. It's just a different assignment in front of me. And my job is to tell that story, hopefully in a powerful way that, connects with the stories of other people's lives as well.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. We have a lot of people, tune in that maybe are just starting songwriting. Maybe they don't have like a huge background, or they didn't necessarily. I feel like you hear a lot of times from songwriters, oh, I've been, writing songs since I was a little kid. Well, it's like for anyone who maybe hasn't had that experience, or as a worship leader kind of wants to start writing their own songs, it can be kind of a scary thing, as you can probably imagine. What tips would you give to someone who maybe is wanting to kind of step into that world, but maybe hasn't, had that experience, with songwriting?
Yeah, I think a lot of times you can get overwhelmed when you start thinking about the whole process as opposed to just the next step and the next right step to take. When any obstacle or any objective or something you want to achieve, like it's like I was listening to this guy who runs like 100-mile races, and he was like, he's like, I run 100-mile races. He's like, but I've never run more than 7 minutes at a time. And he goes, and so he's like, people don't realize that. He's like, no, I kind of tell myself, can you do 7 minutes? He's like, because I can run 7 minutes all day. He's like, then I run another, and then I run another 7. And so I think sometimes songwriting can be like that. Is you're trying to think of having to have some sort of finished thing that sounds like something you'd hear on the radio, and it's like, well, let's baby steps. Let's start with smaller objectives. And so a lot of times, though, it's like, what do you write about? And, I guess now that I have this picture in my head of sitting in my dad's sanctuary and in the church, and looking at my dad's sermon notes and sitting at the piano and really challenging myself to extract a musical message out of what was going to be that Sunday's message, I feel like when
Yeah.
you involve, when you kind of have your antennas up, and that's the job of a songwriter, is to kind of be a very observant person who walks through life, like
Yeah.
with your antennas up, you're paying attention. There's no shortage of things to write about when your eyes are open and your heart's open and you're
Yeah.
paying attention.
Right.
But a
Wow.
lot of times people ask me like, well, how do I start writing songs? And I'm like, a lot of times it's by starting. You start by not writing a song. You start by
Mm.
journaling. You start by, my songs don't become finished pieces. That's not the first stage. The first stage is, am I paying attention throughout my life? Am I becoming a character in other people's stories? Am I opening myself up to experiences? And then am I like keeping track of those ideas as they come?
Mm.
And so a lot of times I encourage people just to start by not writing a song, start by journaling, and
Yeah.
you'll find your songs in that process as well.
Yeah. That's super helpful. Yeah, as a new songwriter, you're like concerned about making a catchy melody or a clever lyric. When you take all these songs and look at them just written out, you probably wouldn't think anything of it, but then it turns into something incredible.
It really does.
Yeah, that's great. We like to kind of ask also, everyone we kind of have on these things. If you could go back in time, you're talking to yourself as a young worship leader, new artist. What bit of advice would you give yourself for the road ahead, knowing everything that you know now?
Man, it's so funny because, I always think when I hear a question like that, I always think if I could go back and tell myself something, that's one thing. But the question is, would the younger me, pay attention? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Sometimes there's a beauty to your blindness when you're
Mm.
young and driven, and you know what I mean? And so it's kind of like
Yeah, for sure.
there were certain times in my development as an artist or writer where nobody could tell me anything, but just because, or rather, I took rejection really well in the form that of when people turned me down for a record deal or whatever, that just motivated me. It didn't discourage me. It motivated me. But I guess if I could tell it a younger me something, it would be don't, um, don't use a pen to draw borders around what you think God's calling on your life is.
Mm.
Use a pencil at best and have your
Yeah.
eraser ready. Keep your eraser ready because, the Bible talks about God doing exceedingly and abundantly more. And I think a lot of times we tend to limit what we think we're capable of or what we think how we think God is going to use us because we can only see so far. And
Yeah.
so I think that's been one of the most exciting discoveries in my life is, if I would have had a description, well, here's how God's going to use me. And I'm looking back now and I go, man, it's been bigger and better and different.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
than I ever would have imagined. And so just keeping my eyes open and not being so fixated on my plan for my life, but really leaning in to make sure that I'm following God's plan for my life. And sometimes you can't see that in the moment, so
Yeah.
I think for me, a good example was I wanted to get a record deal. And for close to 4 years in my time in Nashville, I got rejected and no record deal.
Mm.
But what I did get was a songwriting opportunity, which
Wow.
launched a whole career of me writing songs behind the scenes, not just focusing on making my records. And so now here I am. I've been in Nashville for 20 years, but guess what? Like I released an album, but I had this whole other, just because I release an album doesn't mean that I'm stopping my songwriting. I'm actually going and I'm working with this artist and this artist and this artist, and I get to do all these other things. And at the time I was so focused on, I'm going to make records. I'm going to get a record deal. And God had this plan that was way broader than that, where he was going to use me as a songwriter far beyond the confines of my own albums. And all these years later, I can see that now. And it's been a real blessing to see that God's plans are bigger and better. And I want to be where he wants me to be more than anything.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, you said yourself, as someone who's kind of looking towards a career in sports or athletics, things got shaken up pretty drastically, but all you can really do is just steward the gifts that God's given you. And I think you're
Mhm.
a great kind of, testament to his sovereignty, and the way he sees through his situation, takes care of, those people. So that's really encouraging, because we don't know kind of what the next season has in store. So that's awesome to hear. Um, yeah, man. Well, to circle back to the album's out. You are soaking it up. What does your week look like? Day in, day out. What are you doing right now? Are you taking it easy? Are you going to be hitting the road anytime soon? Or what's the future looking like for Matthew West right now?
Well, I'm on a tour right now. The My Story, Your
Okay,
Glory tour is out this spring.
cool,
And so today you're catching me on a day off in Nashville. And
awesome.
so I'm a very high capacity person. But I also have learned like I'm big on like efficiency too, so like there's a lot of things that I'm counted on to accomplish in a week, and I can't do that by not being structured. So
Hmm.
I know sometimes it can sound weird when you're talking about creative things, that you would think of creative things needing space or lack of structure, but I find that to be the opposite or the enemy of creative progress. Is like I need to, if I don't schedule something, it won't get done. And so I
Yeah.
schedule and then fiercely protect my creative time. So right
Mm,
now, to give you an example, what I love about my life is that there's multiple rhythms that are taking place in multiple stages of what I get to do. When I look at the end of a week, it's always unique and fun and exciting. But for
yeah.
right now, I'll start my week on, I'll say Wednesday night. I get on a bus and then I'm in a different city on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on tour. And so I wake up on the bus. I have interviews on Fridays mostly from the road. Thursdays I have some staff meetings where I'm on the phone. I might schedule a Zoom songwriting session from the tour bus in one of those afternoons. And then Saturday, Sunday, we have shows. So before shows, I'll get back home Monday morning. Monday is my day of rest. So I exercise, I catch up with my family, take my dogs
Yeah.
for a walk. I'm resting, I'm recovering. Tuesday, I have a songwriting appointment with an artist who's making their record and has invited me to be part of their process. And then Wednesday is my meeting day. I put all of my non-creative stuff in one day,
Yeah. There
so
you
that
go.
I can connect to my songwriting time other than that. So if people need to have a meeting with me, they know Wednesdays are the days that they can catch me.
They can get
And
you.
then from there, it's like I record a podcast, which I squeeze in at different times. And, I write a weekly devotional, which I squeeze in as an extension of
Yeah.
my own personal quiet time. So there's a lot of different things going on, but I'm usually having at least two songs written in a week is kind of my
Yeah.
target for 2023.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's huge. That's a big target, but kind of a question that I thought of as you're talking about all that is, you have these times set aside. Like you said, you're very structured, very organized, and that's important to you, even in a creative sense. But there's got to be undoubtedly times where, even despite all that structure, you sit down to write a song and you're out of gas. You're like, I just don't have anything to give to this right now. I mean, there's a lot of people probably in that boat that want to songwrite or maybe just low on creative juices. What's your kind of method for overcoming that? Do you push through? Kind of what are your go-to things that you would use to get over a hurdle like that?
Well, two things. One, years ago, I wrote an article for CCM magazine, and it was called "The Writer's Block." And I kind of stumbled on this theme because I felt like I began to realize just how many similarities there are, some parallels between my journey as a songwriter and my spiritual journey. And,
Mm.
for example, like the discipline of quiet time or Bible study, like there's just
Right.
days where I do not feel like reading my Bible. But if I do it anyway, God
Yeah.
always shows up. He always honors
Right.
that effort when I choose faith over an emotion or a feeling. And the
Mm.
same goes with my songwriting. Like when I dig in, even on the days I don't feel like it or feel like my tank is empty,
Yeah.
there's something that I can tell you so many times where I've been surprised by what has happened when I chose to write, even though I felt like I didn't have it,
Mm.
um, so digging in anyways, even when you don't feel like it, and being diligent
Yeah.
about scheduling that time um, is important. And then beyond that, I think I was listening to something the other day, and this pastor was talking about just the importance of protecting the secret place, and
Mm.
it really spoke to me because I think a lot of times, like when I feel drained creatively, it's also because I've allowed myself to be depleted and drained spiritually.
Mm.
And so, I think part of the downside of the way that I'm wired is that I'm always running hard. And
Yeah.
so Psalm 46:10 is like a real pull me back kind of
Mm.
reminder of what does it look like to protect just as fiercely, if not more, my time alone with the Lord. And I think sometimes I get convicted too because I want to spend time with Jesus because I know I need to spend time with Jesus, and
Yeah.
that's where I'm refreshed and revived and renewed, and
Yeah.
that's what matters most. Sometimes as a
Yeah.
creator, you have to do a heart check too to go, am I reading my Bible today just because I'm
Mm.
like, sometimes I can't turn my songwriter brain off, and I'll be reading a
Yeah.
scripture and I'll be like, ooh, I just had a song idea. And I'm like,
Mm.
Lord, forgive me. I don't want that to be my motivation. And
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
ideas will come even when it's not my motivation, but I still want to have that search me and know me, Lord. Like, I want to spend time with you because I want to spend time with you,
Yeah.
not because I want to get a song idea. And
Yeah.
so I think that's part of it too, is just protecting fiercely and not getting too busy talking about Jesus that I don't have time to talk to him.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I feel like we've heard the story so many times. It's not rare that those times where you do run into the writer's block is like where you get the most, powerful, melodies and lyrics anyways. It's like, well, it's not on my power that I'm doing this. So you're relying only on God, literally,
Right.
for that to come through. So, um, yeah, that's incredible, man. I appreciate you jumping on here with us and kind of sharing. That's all I had really today. But
Thanks for having me.
congrats on the yeah, man. Congrats on the album. And you have are there tour dates available if we were to look those up online?
Yes, at
We can
MatthewWest.com. We'll be on tour. I think we've got 20 something more shows, and
okay.
so lots of exciting things going on. But I'm really excited because it's for the first time I'm sharing some of these worship songs that I've written for the record, and I'm getting to lead them on the tour. And it's really kind of bringing me back to when I was leading worship in my dad's church growing up, and
It's
what
awesome.
that experience was like. So I'm excited to hear from people and worship leaders how songs might be fitting into their worship experience at church. And thanks for letting me hang today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. You're welcome anytime. Let us know. We're happy to follow up and have another chat. So yeah, it's great seeing you, and we'll talk to you again soon. All right.
All right, man. Thanks, man.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for jumping on, y'all. That was Matthew West talking about his new album and things he's got going on. So we're really glad to hear from him. Wishing him the best on his tour that he's out on right now. You can get all of Matthew West's tracks over at loopcommunity.com if you want to be leading those in your church services. So head over there for more resources and information. Other than that, we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Matt. Thanks so much for listening. Hey, let us know what you thought. Write down in the comments, wherever you're listening, watching from, what you thought. Make sure you send us a message. Subscribe to our channel, YouTube, Facebook, and stay tuned for more from Loop Community.